In May 2020, current UCL history students came together to reflect on their experiences at UCL History and to pass on their tips and advice to future cohorts of incoming undergraduates through a series of thematic panel discussions. The idea underpinning the project is for current students to help future cohorts to transition smoothly into life in our department and to create a stronger sense of community within the department. The project is led by Dr. Chloe Ireton and Dr. Patrick Lanchner and builds on the work that the two of them started with the History Society at the Induction weekend in 2019, where they hosted a panel discussion with students on the theme of being a historian at university. Building on the concept of hosting panel discussions with current students, over the course of 4 days in May 2020, current students and history tutors came together to reflect on the experience of studying history at UCL and life in London. This video is one of the 9 panel discussions that we produced for the project. Welcome to our 5th panel discussion with UCL history students. This is panel discussion 5, welfare during your degree, employment and managing competing workloads, looking ahead to building your career after graduation. This discussion forms part of the UCL History Undergraduate Induction Student Panel Discussions project.
Hi, my name is Jade Burroughes. I'm a third year history student here at UCL and I'm co-convener of this project alongside Chloe. My particular research interests are situated in gender history in modern Germany, particularly sexual violence in the Holocaust. I will be pursuing these interests further as of October at the University of Oxford, where I'll be doing a Masters in Modern European History, and I am also the current UCL History Society President.
Hi there, my name's Toby and I'm a third and final year history student at UCL. During my degree, I had a particular interest in religious relations in the early modern period, specialising in my final year on the Ottoman Empire. My extracurricular activities that I have interest in include working for the International Relations Society, being involved with the cross-country team and the Christian Union.
Hello, my name's Manisha Thind. I've just finished my third year. However, I did a year abroad at UPenn, so I have 1 more year left. My history focus is around decolonisation, nationalism and civil rights movements. That said, I do a bit of everything. When I finish my degree, I either want to go into politics or management of some sort. However, I am still exploring my options.
Hi, my name's Hugo. I'm a first year history with a year abroad student. My main interests are history of Southeast Asia and world history, as well as history of international relations. And when I graduate, I'm hoping to work in either diplomacy or government.
Hi, my name is Rachel Cooklin. I'm a second year history student interested in early modern Britain, and I've also done some modules focusing on African decolonisation as well. I live at home in North London, and during my time at UCL have been involved with the university netball team and the Jewish Society.
Hi there, my name is Adria. I've just finished year 1 of UCL History, and when I graduate, I hope to go into politics.
Hi, my name is Ella Ticton-Smith and I'm a second year historian at UCL. My main interests are European social and cultural history, particularly France and Germany. And in terms of my extracurriculars, I do a lot of dance with UCL Dance Society. I'm on a committee for a student magazine at UCL, and I also do a lot of climate activism in London. After I graduate, I'm hoping to go somewhere into the field of environmental policy, campaigning or activism.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a third year student going into my 4th year as I did my year abroad at the University of British Columbia, the Vancouver campus. During my degree, my main interests are the history of Latin America and the history of drugs. Hopefully, after my undergraduate, I am going to do a master's in either history or migration policy.
Hi, my name's Isabel. I'm a second year history student with an emphasis on modern British history. I'm also a live-at-home student from North London, which is really why I wanted to be a part of this project to share my experiences for other live-at-home students coming to UCL this September. I'm also involved in the International Relations Society and the Medieval Society.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jon Chandler. I teach the undergraduate core courses, Writing History, Making History and Approaching History. These courses will introduce you to academic writing, research and scholarship, and they're designed to give you a really strong foundation for the rest of your studies. I also teach a course on the history of native North America that you can take in your 2nd or your 3rd year.
Hi, I'm Chloe Ayrton. I'm a lecturer here in the History Department at UCL, and I am leading, along with my colleague Dr. Patrick Lanchner, this really exciting project called UCL History Student Induction Video Resources, which really is part of the work that he and I are both doing in September to welcome in the new cohort of incoming undergraduate students. And we've been leading a series of panel discussions with current students to talk about various themes of life as a history student here at UCL. And you'll be seeing quite a lot of me over the course of these videos because I am chairing all of the discussions. And so I wanted to start off by asking you, London is a really expensive city. How do you manage it as students? You know, what are the issues that you've confronted, and how have you managed to kind of keep afloat while studying here? And I know that Toby and I have been talking about this extensively over the last year, while he was in a class of mine. And I wonder what your thoughts are on this. How did you manage?
Yeah, so that was, of course, something that I didn't anticipate just how expensive London would be. I arrived and then very quickly realized that I couldn't live off Tesco meal deals every day, and quickly I'd run out of money and I had to be a little bit more sensible as to how I would budget. But quickly I realized that it was important for me to have some form of employment to sort of keep me going throughout the time in which I was in university. And one of the great things about first year is it can feel a little bit overwhelming quite early on. But if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, there aren't that many essays and projects that you're having to keep doing throughout the year. So you just have a little bit more free time. And one of the ways that I kind of sought out employment was looking for something called a 0 hours contract. So that was a way in which I could work more flexibly. I wasn't contractually bound to do a certain number of hours each week. I could log in and log out. There are a variety of ways in which students do that. Some of them do it through apps and little organizations, but I found out that I did it through a waiting company. And the really great thing about that is I was able to just kind of say, right, on Saturday, I've got a few hours where I can work in. I logged my hours and I ended up doing shifts. It ended up throughout the year, I decided to stick to a couple of places. But it was really great because I just had some money coming in that was additional that I could save up. It meant that I wasn't stressed about meeting budgets when they came to the end of the month. And I could save a little bit to travel and enjoy myself as well. So I encourage strongly students seeking out some way in which they could find employment in their first year. It will be different, of course, depending on your background. But I think we would all agree that it's a great little way to save up some money and keep things going.
Yeah, I've had quite a similar experience with tutoring jobs. So there's a lot of tutoring jobs available in London. A lot of them are very, very flexible. So mine was called Manning's Tutors, and basically they had this online platform where you'd input your hours each week and they'd assign you to a student, or you'd have like a regular arrangement, but you could control your hours like when suited you best. So it never really got in the way of my academic timetable in any way. A very similar arrangement is found in union jobs. So like the student union at UCL offers jobs through them. So there's cafe work, you can work in like the UCL bars. There's also an ambassadoring scheme, and they have very similar flexibility in your hours because obviously they're affiliated with the university. They're never gonna expect you to like miss a lecture to make a shift, and they completely work around you. And also with union jobs, they pay like very, very well. I think my ambassador job pays about £11 an hour, so it's London living wages. Brilliant way to like have a few hours a week or a month just to like supplement living in London.
So I would recommend looking for a job before you start uni, so maybe around the summertime and during your holidays, or as soon as you finish all your exams in high school. I think that way there's like less stress as well when it comes to September, and obviously you have like all your freshers week and you're moving in. So just having something lined up and maybe already starting your job in London prior to starting university, so you've already gotten into the routine and the habit of things. Also making sure that you don't overburden yourself. I had a job I used to work both Saturday and Sunday, but what I started doing was if I had some free time I would do overtime as well. But I think it's important to remember you always need like a balance. So you need to have a balance between your academics, you need a balance between your social sort of life, and you need a balance with your work. So definitely not to put too much on your plate, and to remember that first and foremost, you are a student as well. So yeah.
I think just to build on what everyone has said about flexible work opportunities, when I hit second year and when my workload started slowly piling up, I found a job as a brand ambassador, which I also found was a really, really good way to have not exactly
an extremely flexible way of work, but it's not that many hours a week. And you normally work with other students and you have similar schedules if you are a student. So you don't really have to spend a lot of time figuring out when people are free. And there are always advertisements for brand ambassadors on campus, definitely around the Union building. So if you just go there and try to check out the flyers that we have, or just look up through the UCL Career Service, they do advertise brand ambassador jobs as well. So that would be quite a good way to have a flexible way of income.
Wow, it's interesting how many of you work in one way or another. I mean, it's not surprising given how expensive London is, and all the kind of spiraling costs associated with living here, whether you're living here for the entire year or just in term time. And I guess, you know, as a tutor, and I teach lots of undergraduates, and I also have lots of personal tutees. You know, a lot of students go through a lot of stress and anxiety, especially in that first year. And I imagine it's only made worse if they're having to look for jobs. And I really like Manisha's comment that perhaps finding a job before coming to UCL, before starting that first term, might be a really good idea. But I wonder, how have you managed that work-life balance? Because it's really difficult to not have any weekends and spend your entire weekends working, and how you've managed it perhaps with assignments and keeping up with your schoolwork, and maybe even keeping up with social life. I'm wondering if anybody has any experiences that they might like to share. I know Rachel and I have spoken about this quite extensively.
I would just say to be organised for me was the main thing. It took me quite a while to learn it, and definitely learned it the hard way. And for me, I had set times. So I never did any work on a Wednesday because I had no lectures on a Wednesday. So I was like, oh, it's my midweek day off. And just consistently keeping that. Maybe if there was a big deadline, that would maybe disappear, like my break day would disappear. But just to know that you do need to take time for yourself. And also sometimes if you're not feeling like going out all the time, it's also okay to be like, I'm going to have some me time. My work and working is getting a bit too much and I just need to take some time for myself.
I think one of the things that we're often confronted with as history students is we have such an extended period of summer break where we finish quite early. We finish in May and we start again in late September. And so one of the things I was quite keen to do is to fill that time in which I was working and saving up for the remainder of the year, so that I knew when it came to crunch points throughout the year, I wasn't faced having to balance quite effectively between work and academic studies. And so I'd spent at least half of my summer in some form of employment opportunity so that I was saving sufficiently for the rest of the year. And that doesn't work for everyone. Other people have lots of other things they want to pursue, whether it's an unpaid opportunity or they want to travel. But I found it quite effective in between my years to do kind of front load my earnings so that I didn't have to do as much later on in the year. And that worked quite effectively for me.
With me, I think what happened was, especially in my first year and in the first semester or first term, I ended up saying yes to everything, whether it be like going out with friends or whether it be some volunteering opportunities. I would literally say yes to everything. But what ended up happening was, because I did have lots of working hours and I had essentially been thrown into the deep end with a history degree at UCL, and it is very sort of academically challenging, especially in your first year. I was going on about a few hours of sleep a night, or maybe even like a couple some nights. And the thing is, you do burn out. So what I ended up learning, especially in my second year, is you just have to say no to things and really schedule out your life, so you know, right, so Saturday or Sunday, I'm just going to be working. On Wednesdays, I will work on this subject. So essentially timetabling your life and all the elements of your life and actually being strict with yourself.
For me, it was kind of figuring out what kind of job was the best for me. So I obviously did flexible jobs and I did a few waiting jobs in my second year, but now I work where I live. So I live in private halls and now I work for the company that runs the private halls where I live, which is very nice. And I find it is easier, considering that we live in London, that you don't really have to travel for work and you still get paid very well. And I know that halls like garden halls, they do have job opportunities that you can apply for and work in halls.
So that is also a very useful way to kind of be able to balance your degree and be around uni and still have an income.
It's really interesting and reassuring to hear, all of your experiences in balancing. These are very difficult things to do. And I'm wondering what Hugo thinks, because Hugo and I have been talking about this over the last few days in our discussions.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that London is a big city with a lot of opportunities, and you really, I think, have the opportunity to find the option of job that suits you the best. So for example, I found a job that was 1 or 2 days a week, a 9-hour shift, in a frozen yogurt place, but I really enjoyed my job, and it was also a great opportunity to socialize and meet new people. So for me, I kind of considered that job day as a rest from the academic work, and usually on the days that I would work, I wouldn't do any academic work at all, and I really used my job as a way to kind of de-stress and take my mind off university. So I think you can really use the job to make something positive for yourself. Yeah.
Another thing I would say is that we've talked a lot about jobs and about the usefulness of having a job, but on the other side of the coin is that there are plenty of ways of saving money that doesn't include working extra time, weekends, night shifts, etc. And I guess the first point to note is that the university has very deep pockets, and if you come from, say, a low-income family, or even if you need help paying an extra, if you need some capital investment somewhere, say if you have an opportunity abroad, etc., the university will more times than not help you out, at least with some money. So yeah, that's the first thing. If you need money, the university is very helpful financially. There are also loads of practical ways in which you can save money, and I heard before someone, I can't remember who, said that it's important not to say yes to everything when you get there, and this applies in sort of all aspects of your life, including financial ones. For example, if you know that you're a gym person, or if you're a gym person and you're you go to the cinema, you have loads of hobbies, and before you even arrive to London, you already buy all these memberships. By the time you arrive, you realize, well, you're not even going to have enough time to even get your money's worth in those memberships. So there are plenty of ways that you can save money simply by just not doing things. And there are also ways in which you can save money by doing things, very easy things like don't buy lunch on campus, even though there are some reasonably priced places on campus. Like the night before, if you are self-catered, to make some food, make double what you would eat, so then you can have that for lunch the next day. Yeah.
I think that's one of those.
Also,
sorry, Hugo, go ahead.
And I would say that for many, university is the first experience you have at an adult life, and you also have to accept the fact that maybe you're not gonna get it right on the first month or the second month you're in university, but it's all a learning process, and you kind of learn how to be able to budget over university over the time. And eventually you will get it right. So I think you shouldn't be too worried at the beginning if you have problems with budgeting, because I think every student faces this problem in London.
It's really interesting to hear about everyone's very different experiences with working. And I think one of the things that I find often with my students is that sometimes they have to work so much or so many hours because financially it's impossible for them to be here if not. And it can sometimes really intervene in either their stress or anxiety or ability to finish assignments on time. And I'm just wondering if any of you have had any experiences about how you've managed. So you might have managed your workload well and you've done the reading, but you just can't actually get the essay in at the specific time that it's due because your work, you've just had to work so much. And whether or not the department has been supportive of that, and how have you gone about having those discussions? And I guess a follow-up question to that is just, is it acceptable among your peers to talk about working, and having lower paid jobs, part-time jobs? Is this something that you feel other people do, or you've had to kind of keep quite quiet about? And I wonder, Jade, you've worked a lot, different elements of it within the university and outside. What's your experience been?
So my general experience has been that the department in particular and the university in general are very, very sympathetic to the fact that London is an expensive place to live, and unlike some other unis, it will be quite necessary for students to work alongside their studies. So in terms of measures in place within the department, it's possible to get something called a statement of reasonable adjustments. So if you ever need, and extenuating circumstances. So the difference is with statement of reasonable adjustments, it's like a long-term thing. So you can go and speak to like a counsellor in the student centre, and they basically you can explain your difficulties with meeting deadlines, some things that might affect your ability to meet deadlines. So for example, I suffer from anxiety, and sometimes that gets in the way of me being able to submit my deadlines on time or get them done to a quality that I'm happy with. So what the department does is you'll have a statement of reasonable adjustments that will be like sent to all of your tutors, so that it gives you basically an extra week extension on top of like your normal deadline, just to give you that little bit of extra time to make sure you're happy with it before you submit it, or to write it, depending on what stage you're at. And that's been really invaluable to me, especially in second and third year when the deadlines were kind of piling up a bit more, unlike in first year where you have deadlines quite infrequently in comparison to later years. Extenuating circumstances is more of a standalone. You can apply for certain deadlines in particular, and again, it's an extension. But there are other measures underneath both of those. So, for example, in terms of exams, you can get extra time in exams. You can get things called rest breaks, where if you need to have time out of an exam to, just go and chill out, just get out of your head for a bit, then that's something they can do as well. So it's a really like sympathetic and quite effective system that makes sure that if you do have external stresses in your life that prevent you from like maybe performing at your best, to your potential, that those stresses shouldn't get in the way of you getting the grade you deserve, essentially.
So I didn't know about a SORA in my first year. I genuinely thought that the only way you could get extensions or any sort of help essentially when it came to academics was if you had some sort of learning disability. I didn't realise that if you had work and couldn't cope with like loads of things, or if you had anxiety or just a multitude of different issues, I didn't realise that you could get adjustments for that. So in my first year, my grades really suffered with just everything that was going on and just the sheer enormity of like everything, I guess. But in my second year, I eventually got a SORA, and my grades just went from being 2s to firsts, and I just realised I just was not working to my full potential. And I do have to say, like, the history department is so sympathetic and just so helpful. When you ask for help or if you ask for anything, there's always somewhere, like someone, somewhere, something around the university that can help you. And you just need to know where to look. And if you don't know where to look, you can ask anybody, and you can ask your personal tutors, you can ask Carrie, you can ask your friends. There are so many people there to help you. You just need to ask.
Also, depends what type of work it is. So, for example, if it's formative work, then tutors, depending on the tutor, but they're usually very sympathetic in terms of if you need a bit of an extension or some help, then they're very flexible in terms of making sure they're supporting you with that, and speaking to them before summative assessment to make sure that they are giving you the support you need, because tutors are there to help you as well as educate you.
It's really so wonderful to hear that you're all really aware of the support available and the importance of having those communication strands with either your personal tutor or your academic tutors or the department tutor who we'll be talking with in the next panel, Carrie, and the fact that we do all want to understand and try and help you as much as possible, and certainly not allow for you to be disadvantaged by the fact that you need to work through this, and really understand that that's a very, very difficult situation for all of you. And I guess I wanted to sort of move our conversation on a little bit and think about what are the kind of jobs that you can do, right? What are the kind of jobs that UCL history students do? being in London in many ways is a huge advantage because there's all sorts of work that students can do. I'm always really surprised and amazed by the variety of experiences that people have, but also thinking about some of the experiences as formative in themselves, right? Not necessarily just these jobs you do for minimum wage that you never want to think about again, but whether it's making great friends through these jobs, learning really amazing skills, opening up new careers to us. And I wanted to touch a little bit as well on some of the discussions we've been having over the course of the morning about this sense that some students might feel inadequate because they're dedicating their time to low-paid work or work that's not considered, that's going to be formative in one's career, and perhaps they're missing out on other things like unpaid internships. And sort of how have you been thinking about that over the course of your own experiences? And I know, Toby, you've done so many different kinds of jobs. What are your senses on what you take from that and how you've managed these issues?
Yeah, as Chloe said, I've tried out quite a variety. I've had a little bit of a pick and mix of all of them. And of course, there does exist a stigma around certain types of jobs. So in my first year, I served pies at Chelsea Football Club, and that's not an attractive job. It doesn't have the same ring as got an internship at some top corporation, but it paid the bills and it was really good. And I wish I'd been a bit more open and honest about that, because people could have gone, hey, Toby, I know you're getting minimum wage for this, but have you heard of this as an idea? So, Jade brought up the idea of tutoring. I didn't even know that was a thing in my first year. I'm kind of kicking myself a little bit, but again, it's a nice story to say that I served pies to football players. And at the same time, I guess I hadn't also thought that some of these job opportunities that you can seek out would open up areas that I hadn't even considered. So both Jade and I worked for an organization called the National Citizen Service, providing opportunities for kids. And that was a great way to earn money, and it was being advertised on campus. But in the process of doing it, I realized, I might want to be a history teacher at school or something like that. Like, it was something I'd never even considered. And as Chloe previously said, there's so many things you can try in London. And I just tried something out and realized, hey, this is something I really, really enjoy. And not feeling that you have to be hemmed into sort of the stereotype of what students do at elite universities in London, which is seeking out one or two kind of prized and highly competitive roles, but just going, there's such a huge spectrum on offer. Let's try some of them out and see where they lead.
Yeah, as Toby was saying, I couldn't say it better myself. Like, with NCS particularly, it was last summer, at the end of second year, and all of my friends were applying for really prestigious like internships at like law firms and banks. And when they asked me what I was doing in my summer, I said, I'm going to go and be a team mentor for a group of 16-year-olds, and I'm going to be with them for like 4 weeks, and we're going to go hiking, and it's going to be really fun. And they were like, oh, okay, what's that going to do for you in the future? And for me, I want to go into like teaching and lecturing. So that's really relevant work experience for my personal career trajectory. It gave me such good skills with working with children, communication skills, leadership. But at the time, when I was in that environment where everyone else was applying for these like really prestigious like internships, it made me feel really inadequate, because I was like, oh, maybe I should be doing that. But at the end of the day, it wasn't what I wanted to do, and I needed to resist that pressure to just follow suit. And I think an important lesson for me was when I went to UCL Careers Service, which is essentially where you sit down with a careers tutor and they help you like with CV work or applications. And I'd edited out all of my part-time employment that I didn't think was relevant to the job I was applying for. And she said, oh, your CV's looking a bit scarce. Have you not done anything else? And I was like, oh, I've done loads. I've done part-time jobs since I was 15, but I just didn't think they were relevant, because, what's being a sales assistant in Boots going to do for my potentially future career in journalism? But she said to me, she was like employers really value that type of work experience, because they do give you so many transferable skills that are relevant to all kinds of different jobs. And also the fact that you work part-time alongside your studies is a really good sign of a strong character, someone that is accustomed to hard work, can juggle multiple responsibilities at once. So yeah, essentially, as Toby was saying, I don't think people should be ashamed of it at all. If anything, it's just a testament to how hard you're able to work alongside doing academically stimulating activities as well.
I feel like, especially when you're young, younger and in university, you have all this time to experiment. Like, you can do anything, and especially when you have such like a open-ended degree as history, where your transferable skills can literally apply to anything. I just don't understand why you just wouldn't want to experiment and maybe do a bit of work in this industry or in this service sector. And even if they aren't prestigious, or even if it isn't an internship, working in, like, say, a cafe or a bar or whatever it is, maybe down the line you might want to open up your own bar, you might want to open up your own cafe, you might want to do events, and all this experience just adds up. So it's just, you should just never discount anything and just always just go for anything. And I've talked to like various alumni from various institutions, and they've, like, a large amount of them that I've talked to who have gone into the financial sector or law, or, like, you know, the classic sort of career paths, have always said that they are wondering what their life would have been like if they hadn't just followed the conventional route. And loads of them just did it because they thought, oh, this is what I do now, not because they necessarily actually wanted to do it or they had a passion for it. So I would just say, like, just if you genuinely do what you like, you will end up just, I guess, loving your life and not regretting it.
Yeah, and just following on from what Manisha was saying, work in the service sector and like retail in general always opens up a world of anecdotes that you can use in pretty much any job interview, because the standard job interview questions are something like, oh, describe a situation where you like overcame a challenge. And I did that for my NCS interview I had with one of the program organizers, and I gave an example of when I worked in a coffee shop and the coffee machine stopped working. And she was like, oh, how did you mitigate that really stressful situation? And so, yeah, like even if you do want to go into those prestigious careers, the chances are in your interviews, part-time jobs give you such a world of anecdotes to delve into and show your skills and your ability to be resilient and like adapt to difficult situations.
I really love that notion of the sort of, it's life experience, right? The things that all these different people you interact with who are often not students or students from other places. We've been talking a lot about culture shock of coming to UCL, and we'll talk about it a bit more in the next panel. But I guess part of working is it also opens up different worlds and different experiences outside of the department, outside of UCL history, which can be unexpected, formative, really important. Or, you know, as many of you have discussed, open up potential careers that you hadn't even thought about, hadn't even understood exist. So I think it's really, really interesting to, while it's a very difficult thing, and it really is very difficult to manage working while studying, especially if you're working a lot, especially if you come from a low-income background, there are some elements of it that can be really formative and really important, especially if you're well supported. And so I wonder, you know, one of the things, the questions I have, I guess, is about, we've been talking a lot about the future, this big future, and Jade, you mentioned the pressure to do certain types of internships, going certain types of careers. And I wonder whether we could all reflect a little bit on why is it that you feel this kind of pressure for certain things, or to have it all figured out, when actually, you know, it's very rare for anyone aged 19 to 21 to have their life figured out. I certainly didn't, or to even know what they're good at. But also, in what ways has the different kinds of work you've done or volunteer opened up potential new avenues, or helped you see the things that you're passionate about? I know Rachel and I have been talking about this, you know, over the days, and I wonder maybe you could get us started off. We can't hear you.
I think for me, a lot of coming to university was very much, and especially studying a subject that wasn't necessarily vocational, as a first generation student, was very much like, oh, okay, what are you going to do with that? And that today career paths aren't necessarily as linear as when my parents would have gone to university, where you went to university if you were studying medicine, or you wanted to be an accountant or a lawyer or things like that. That there are now so many different careers in so many different areas that it isn't as simple as, oh, you want to be a doctor, so you study medicine, that you can do so much with a history degree. And all of every experience you have in the workplace allows you to put your skills into practice and gives you more experience.
Yeah, I want to echo pretty much exactly what Rachel said, and I think one of the things that I regret in terms of my attitude when I arrived at university is seeing my degree purely as a means to an end, in that it would be something I could just kind of do, and so I could quickly move on to something, rather than really kind of reveling and enjoying in the process of being intellectually stimulated and all that came with. And actually, while I'm really glad I worked, I think it was really important and I needed it in parts, I do sometimes regret spending too much time in the world of work and academic work, and I wasn't really able to fully appreciate all of the benefits that this intellectual community had. And on the second point, I think we often talk about this idea of forming a network, and it's a particularly toxic term we often get in London. It's all about networking and having a little CV that you can hand out to people, or having a little business card some students have, which I always found remarkable. But it's this idea that I think there's also being able to network with ideas and being intellectually stimulated within common rooms and stuff. And that can be talking about your vocational interests or your job experiences or things that you're interested in. But being in an environment where there are 200 people from 18 to 21 years of age that are stimulated and talking off ideas from each other is a really fantastic thing. And you just discover whole vast areas that you'd never have considered previously. And I think if I kind of stuck in this kind of, regimented, straightforward kind of way of looking at things when I arrived, I certainly wouldn't have discovered all the things I've come to really love and appreciate from university.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Toby said. I went through such a period where I did feel that pressure, and I started applying to internships I had literally no interest in doing. And everyone had a LinkedIn, and everyone had like a really, really like bulky CV. And I started panicking. I was like, oh, I need to start doing all this work experience. I need to start doing all these things that I'm not interested in, but I just need to make it look like I'm, like exploring all these avenues that I have no interest in whatsoever. And there was this period actually coincided. It was in second year when I had a lot of deadlines to do. And I found myself wanting to do my work way more than applying for internships. And I was like, why is that? And then I realized it's because what I most enjoy is my degree. And that was when I came to the realization that I probably want to carry on my degree into postgraduate. And that was a really big revelation for me, because I was like, is that a valid like trajectory to go down? And of course it is. Like, and even if you don't have no idea what you want to do, I just think applying for internships that you have no interest in doing just for the sake of having a really impressive CV is just, it's a waste of energy. Like, it's really good to explore avenues, but if you're not passionate about something, the likelihood of it actually helping you figure out what you want to do is very, very slim. And I think you just need to try and not get caught up in that pressurized environment. I think there's a really big tendency with UCL, because it's such an elite university and it has all these really impressive alumni that go into journalism and law and etc., etc. And there's a tendency to get caught up in that and think, well, that's my path too. But the truth is, like, it's okay to, if you want to have a year off to figure out what you want to do, you can do that. And it's okay if you want to go into something like completely niche that like the big alumni haven't gone into. Like, that's completely valid. And I think you're better off putting your energy into getting experience, trying to figure out what your passion is, rather than just trying to impress an employer by a really bulky CV with like 100 different part-time jobs on that have no relevance to what you're even interested in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I don't think you need to go down like the conventional route at all. And especially when you're in somewhere like UCL, which has so many resources, you should like just take advantage of them. For example, there's like loads of these summer schools and summer programs where UCL pays like a hefty portion of the travel costs or accommodation costs or the studying costs. And you can only really do that when you're in undergrad, or maybe in some cases a couple of masters, where you literally go around the world. You can go to China, you can go to America, you can go essentially anywhere. So doing that instead of like a conventional internship at one of like the 5 like biggest law firms or one of the big banks, it honestly looks really just fantastic. Not only like on your CV, but just talking to other people about going to China and learning some Mandarin and learning about business in China. So yeah, there's definitely loads more opportunities that make you look quote unquote impressive or interesting, or just have to have something to talk about that UCL does offer.
Yeah, a really short point, and Adria mentioned it earlier about the idea that UCL has really deep pockets. And in my first year, I tapped into the Global Experience Bursary, which is this opportunity to do study abroad in the summer, and it was fully funded by UCL. And I was like, oh, well, I might as well give it a shot. And it turns out I ended up spending time in Morocco, and after graduation, I'm going to actually go move to Morocco, you know, and it's something I never would have anticipated or experienced. And making use of these kind of copious bursary funds that the UCL has, taking them up, and it could have been a rubbish 4 weeks, and I regretted doing it, but I hadn't. I tried it. I experienced something new. I took advantage of the things that were on offer from the department, and I'm so tremendously thankful for just for applying something I thought I would have an interest in, and turns out it led me down a completely different avenue, but really exciting.
I really love what both Manish and Toby have been talking about, which is the serendipity of life, right? And how sometimes you make a choice having no idea what it's going to lead to, and it can just totally and utterly change the course of your life. For whatever reason. In your case, Toby, going to study Arabic in Morocco suddenly opened up this whole world of opportunities, culture, linguistic, etc., friendships, you know, that may well change everything. And I think one of the things that I always find surprising, we'll talk a little bit in the next panel about managing stress and anxiety, about this thing I find surprising about the students who I work with, is often they don't realize how amazing they are, right? How privileged they are, how what bright and brilliant futures they are. And I mean, we've spoken about this on other panels and other conversations. Being here at UCL, whatever you do with it, is going to change the course of your life. It's going to be very different to had you not come to university, had you not come to London. There will be things about it that absolutely change everything for you. And what we can't determine is how. Sometimes we can't plan out every step of a career, because serendipity does have a lot to do with it. But I was recently on a panel as an alumni in Queen Mary, talking to the current history students, and they were talking about like building a career as an academic. And they sort of said, you know, what do you wish you knew? And I said, the thing I most wish I knew was actually that when I was sitting here at age 20, to believe that I myself was, you know, had the capabilities and abilities and aptitude to be what I am now, right? If I could sort of look back and say, you know, over 10 years, that this is something I could be an academic, I could do a PhD, then, you know, my life would have been sort of slightly less stressful. So I think in some ways I'd like to convey to you all, like, whatever you do and whatever struggles you come up with, you are capable and you have the aptitude to build whatever you want to build. But it's going to take time, right? It's going to be hard. So I know, Lisa, you and I have been talking about this for a while. What's your thoughts?
I just kind of wanted to mention that I think that the fact we are doing this panel is very important, because we don't normally talk about things like this. It's kind of the only thing people mention are the fancy internships that people have mentioned, and the spring weeks, and the really big corporations that they're going to work for. And actually knowing that history students realize that that's not the only way you can work, and that's not the only way your life is going, and that's not the only way to get to the future that you want, I think is very, very reassuring. And I think it's very important for incoming students to know that, because I've definitely never spoken to people about it and kind of thought that we're all floating alone and everyone's had those big jobs. So yeah.
Another thing I'd like to add, I heard Jon Chandler talk about tapping into this idea that we will, or you guys are a bit older than me, will essentially graduate into what will be the next global recession, which is something that kind of comes along. And although this, you know, it sounds very daunting, it sounds very bad, but I think, you know, there will be a growing number of students who will realize that, given the current situation, there is no rush to, you know, go down a streamlined path to be a corporate lawyer in Manhattan, or likewise, you know, in Canary Wharf. You know, that it's okay to take more time studying, etc. You know, finding yourself, so forth. And another thing, not really so much related, but I think that the study of history itself, you know, we've tapped into that. It's sometimes looked down upon as a degree, but I think that with everything that's going on right now, I think it will happen. I think, you know, the past has shown us that whenever these kind of things happen, the study of history becomes, you know, more popularized and indeed more important.
Adia, thank you so much. That's such a wonderful way to end our really fascinating panel, right? About also the increased importance of the intellectual work we do to the work of society and the kind of work and careers you'll be going into and choosing to build, right, as you leave here and move on. So we're going to wrap up now just because we're running short of time, but it's been really so interesting to hear about all of your experiences in terms of employment and managing workloads. And it's all related to the broader theme of pastoral support, which is what we'll be talking about in our next panel. So I'm sure we'll come back to some of these themes. But I agree. I think it's really important to get these conversations out there to help other students and new students understand that a lot of their peers are going through these issues with regards to both working part-time or sometimes full-time, especially over the summers, but even not quite knowing where they want to go in terms of their career and maybe feeling pressured, right? Some kind of peer pressure with regards to what they should and shouldn't be doing. So we really thank you. You're literally giving a gift to the next generation. We really, really thank you for that.